Peachtree Corners, your neighborhood. Peachtree Corners, where life is good. When you want to know what's happening and keep up with the times, come be a part of Peachtree Corners Life.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita, the weekly internet radio show keeping you current on the interests of the people, places, and politics in the city of Peachtree Corners. Be inspired, stay current, and be informed. Visit our website, peachtreecornerslife.com, for ways to listen to our broadcast live every week or download our podcast from iTunes.
Hi, this is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Live. I have a special guest tonight that I'll get to momentarily. His name is Scott Hilton, but I'll introduce him a little bit more formally. Scott, say hi.
Yep. Hey, Facebook world and podcast. Excited to be here. As I told Rico, this is the 60 minutes of Peachtree Corners. I'm excited to be here this evening.
Yes, thanks. I appreciate that, Scott. I am humbled. Before we get into it, I just want to mention a couple of things. That Prototype Prime is a sponsor of ours. We get to use their podcast studios. Prototype Prime is a hardware, software startup incubator here in Peachtree Corners. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Thank them for allowing us to use their podcast room for our monthly shows and for our special shows like we had a few weeks ago on the Ed Hour. Also, I want to make sure you know about Peachtree Corners Network, which is on YouTube. And that's a city-sponsored, supported channel that has videos that are being put up there, all about Peachtree Corners. One of them you should see is Peachtree Positive, which is Light Up the Corners. And that's a great video. I had it on our Facebook page. And I want to thank Explore Gwinnett for being a partner of ours. Every month we put out a top 10 list with Explore Gwinnett. They're Gwinnett County's tourism bureau, if you will. And that's their new name, Explore Gwinnett. And this month's top 10 list is Food Bucket List. So check it out on our Facebook page, and you'll see a video up this shortly as well. So to introduce my guest tonight, let me tell you that Scott, according to Wikipedia, is an American politician. He's a member of the Georgia House of Representatives, District 95, which represents Peachtree Corners, along with some other areas. That's like right. Johns Creek, I think. Or
parts of Duluth, Norcross. Yep.
Excellent. And according to Wikipedia, Scott's sponsored 53 bills. He's a member of the Republican Party. And I'll do a takeoff from his Twitter account. He's a servant of Christ, a husband, a father, a state rep, a banker, a runner, a conservative, special needs advocate, and an outdoor enthusiast. So welcome, Scott.
Rico, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad you read off Wikipedia and not Google. I found out something the other day that I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Yes, I saw that.
But if you Googled my name a few weeks ago, we've gotten it fixed now. Okay. At one point, it said St. Petersburg, Russia. So I want to thank Google for fixing that, and St. Petersburg, Florida. Yeah.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Glad you weren't in Russia, though.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we have him here in Peachtree Corners, so that's a good thing. He doesn't need a visa or a passport, so we're good.
No. Yeah.
So, you've been representing Peachtree Corners and District 95 since 2017, since last year.
That's right.
Yeah. Right. So, I don't know. Tell us a bit about what, how does that feel? How does it feel being in the House and working under the dome?
I appreciate you asking that. And first, before we even get started, I know Hurricane Florence is hitting parts of the Carolinas tonight, and so I just want to give a shout out and let people know that our thoughts and prayers are with those along the coast,
sure.
And hopefully everyone's been able to evacuate and people are safe. The good news is it looks like it's sort of weakened a little bit. So
yeah, thank goodness it's not the 4 or 3 that they thought.
That's right. Yeah, so. It looks like it's down to a 2 there. So hopefully everyone in that area is safe. But to answer your question, Rico, serving the House has been honestly one of the greatest honors of my life. Every time I walk under that gold dome and onto the floor, I still get goosebumps even to this day. It's just cool being down there and a part of that activity and really just being in a position where you can make your difference and help your neighbors out and do the right thing. So absolutely love it, and we'll do it for as long as the voters would like me to.
And you've been busy out there, it seems. So there's quite a few things that we could talk about tonight. We probably won't even have time to talk about everything that I dug up. And I'm sorry, I'm just saying that, just joking. But there's a lot of things that you've been busy with. Let's go through a little bit of it. You've been so let's start off with one of the big things, the personal income tax cut that the state of Georgia passed the first time since 1933.
That's right.
Right.
That's
So
right.
tell us a little bit about that. That's $5 billion being returned back to taxpayers. No?
That's right. I think this was one of the most exciting things we were able to accomplish this past session. So for the very first time since income tax has been put in place in 1933, we've cut it. And we've been able to do so because of conservative budgeting and being fiscally responsible. So what all that means is in Georgia we're required by the Constitution to balance our budget. So for every dollar of receipt, we can't spend any more in expenses. And so this year we're in a position because we've grown the rainy day fund to about $2.5 billion to now begin returning money back to taxpayers. So we cut a quarter point off the income tax, and if we continue to do well as a state and perform well fiscally, then the income tax will be reduced again the following year. So,
Is it because of growth of tax revenue in the state, or also cutting existing programs to be able to accommodate that $5 billion?
Yeah, it's interesting. So if you look at the budget in Georgia here, our budget's actually grown over the last 10 years from $16 billion to $25 billion today, 25, 26.
Yeah.
But on a per capita basis, we're still spending about the same per person here in Georgia. So we have had an influx of people, an influx of jobs, an influx of businesses that, yes, has produced more in revenue. Some of the tax changes in D.C. at that level would have resulted in more tax income here in Georgia, and we thought that money is best spent in the pockets of our taxpayers.
All right, cool. I know there was something else that you've been passionate about too that ended up passing. I guess the reform passed this year, right? The adoption reform.
Yes.
It's the first reform since 1993 that makes it makes it easier to adopt. It eliminates the middleman out of the adoption process, and it simplifies the out-of-state adoption.
Yeah.
But how's the rest of it work? Because there's more to it than that even.
There's more to it than that. I mean, the actual bill itself is about that thick. It was unbelievable. Yeah, and a lot of credit goes to Representative Burt Reeves out in Cobb County for really spearheading that. He was the leader on that and did a fantastic job. But to your point, it hadn't been touched since the early 90s. Georgia was lagging in our placement of adopted and foster children, and so through this we're going to make it a lot easier for children and families to be put together into safe homes. And so a number of changes that went on with that, but that's one of the bills that I'm really most excited to see us get done.
And there's a lot of good things there. I think one of the other things was also allowing fees to be paid to birth mothers also in private adoptions.
Yeah, there's a lot of little changes that kind of went unnoticed. One thing that I thought was interesting was the wait time to which when you get the child, there was a period of which the birth mother could revoke and essentially change her mind. And so we've shorted that period of time, and that really decreases the stress that the adoptive parents have, who are kind of in this odd sort of limbo, right after the adoption there.
Yeah.
So.
And it's a sad thing when you have 2 or 3 weeks, I forget how long that period was.
Yeah.
And then a mom can come back and say, no, I decided not to.
Exactly.
And that's really, I totally agree.
It removes a lot of stress, yeah.
The other thing, we're going down through a bit of a list that I have.
Sure.
Transportation HB 930, that was creating a regional transit. That actually is coming up for a vote in Gwinnett County, I think.
Correct, yeah.
So I know there's been a lot of discussion on Nextdoor, because I thanked one of those, when you're on Nextdoor, that app, and you thank someone or make a comment, unless you adjust your notifications, bang, if that's a really big topic, you're getting like 100 notifications that day.
Yeah.
So that's that's what I've been getting over the last 3 days.
Oh, I love next door. Yeah, you got to tread lightly. Yeah,
and I can shut it off, but it's amazing to me. I'd like to see my neighbors and the comments they put back and forth. Some of it's just snippy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, House Bill 930. Again, Kevin Tanner, Chairman Kevin Tanner, did a great job on this in the House. This is one of the most exciting things I think we've done. I have knocked on thousands of doors, and I hear time and time again, Scott, we've got to fix transportation. And one of my big frustrations is that each county sort of operates within their own silo. And right. Gwinnett has its own transportation, Cobb, Fulton, and nothing really seems to talk or be organized together. And so that's what House Bill 930 aims to accomplish, is saying, and if I live in Gwinnett, I ought to be able to take public transportation to a Braves game or to downtown, and not have to get separate MARTA cards, separate, tickets, and work on separate systems.
So it's creating a global system with one card?
It is. It's interesting. So you think about it. If I wanted to go to Kennesaw today, right. I would have to log on to 3 different websites. I would have to buy 3 different tickets, 3 different ways, and it would just be a mess. So this kind of organizes all that, gets under one structure, and then allows these counties like Gwinnett to opt into this and to start to expand MARTA and mass transit into our county.
So let me ask you this, because
Sure.
everyone has a different opinion about it, so I just want to spend a few more minutes on this.
Oh, yeah.
The Gwinnett County has forever been, as politically speaking, and groundswell of not wanting MARTA in Gwinnett County. Now the vote's going to be coming up, I think it's in March of 2019?
That's correct. 2019, yeah.
2019, right. So they've pushed it out to the spring of 2019, just before spring break, to remove the politics out of it, I guess, right? And to decide whether we, as a county, should decide what type of MARTA we want here, right? Because, it's not... Everyone thinks heavy rail, and the heavy rail part is only one small aspect of it, no?
Yeah, so the county gets to vote on whether, we opt into the agreement that the county has sort of established. So once we do that, then, all the pieces start to kind of come together. In our area in particular, we are very in favor, at least from what I've seen, of mass transit. Now, the mass transit takes on a number of different forms.
Right.
Some of that is hard rail, bus rapid transit, some of this, hub and spoke type transportation. For me personally, I'm in favor of some sort of hard rail, but it's incredibly expensive, and so I'm not a huge fan of. I don't think we ought to drag hard rail up way into Gwinnett County, but I think there's a variety of options that we ought to look at, and it's exciting. There's so many different technologies that are coming online right now that I think we ought to look at those too. But the big thing for me and why I voted for the bill is that the money tax-wise it stays here in Gwinnett, so it's not Gwinnett taxpayers paying to fund MARTA in Atlanta.
That is phenomenally correct. Because that was the key part that I saw. And Lynette Howard, I believe our county commissioner, has been working a bit on that. To make sure essentially that money does stay in Gwinnett County, so it doesn't go out anywhere else, and we have it here. There is that, and they've been talking more about doing not the heavy rail as much, although they want to extend, I think, the Doraville to maybe Jimmy Carter in 85. But after that, it's mainly buses and
some dedicated lanes. I like what Gwinnett's done with some of these pay-as-you-go, the toll lanes and things like that up 85. In fact, just this past Saturday, Cobb County got theirs with I-75. Now has the toll lanes coming through there, and that's relieved a lot of traffic on their side.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good over there. They need it over there, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you've been a big component of education.
That's right.
Public education, but also private education in a way, right? So there's a lot of charter school type stuff and a lot of private school. So a couple of things. One is I know that. So I don't know this first one. I'm not quite sure. So explain this to me. What is quality basic education (QBE)? I thought we were giving that, but I'm not sure what that is now in this sense. So help me along there.
Well, I'm not sure there's many people that understand, but QBE, or Quality Basic Education, is the formula that we use to decide how much funding goes to schools. So a child in Gwinnett County receives both local funding that comes from the county and also funding from the state, which is dictated by the QBE formula. So this year was the first year that the General Assembly has actually fully funded that formula as far as the funding that it calls for.
Really?
So, yeah.
So you mean they've had this formula, but they've never funded it?
It's never been fully funded. Yeah,
Really?
correct. So this year, and this year's budget was the very first time that we put in an extra $400 million, $300 to $400 million to fully fund.
All right, so that's begging for me to ask this question. Has that formula changed along the way?
It has not, and many would say, and including myself, that we do need to relook and at changing that formula. I think it's been in place, I want to say, since maybe the mid-'80s or so. And
Really?
so there's a lot of people down there that say it needs to change. And we may see that addressed with we've got a lot of new statewide leadership coming in from governor, lieutenant governor. So hopefully that's one of those things that they look at addressing here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gold Scholarship, there's a $100 million increase to that cap.
Yeah.
Now, that Gold Scholarship, I wasn't too aware of it, but it's a tax credit program that helps actually private schools as well, right? Scholarships to private schools.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah, it doesn't actually help the private school itself. It helps children in low-income families have access to private school. So we increased the cap to $100 million. The reason being is that the cap before, it would literally fill up day one. So there was a clear appetite on people in the community for it. And what it does is essentially, if you make a contribution to a private school, you get a dollar-for-dollar tax credit on your state return. And so that money then goes into a scholarship program that allows people who are economically disadvantaged to have access to private school.
So if you're self-employed or a business that wants to donate $5,000 to a private school, you can write off dollar for dollar against your income.
That's right. The trouble was it was always oversubscribed, meaning that a company would say, we want to donate $5,000 to a school,
Right.
but given where the cap was at, they would only come back and say, we're sorry, you can only get a tax credit. They could still give the $5,000, but they'd only get tax maybe for half of it.
So if I was a private person and I'm giving that money also to a private school, I can do the dollar for dollar
correct,
also. Then.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's been fantastic. I mean, it's Rico, we live in a great community with great schools, and a lot of people in our community have the income and opportunity to have choice. But there's a lot of families, just because of their economic status, they don't have access to choice. This allows them to say, you know what, there's scholarship dollars out there. Maybe I don't go to the public school, maybe I go to the private school. So it's been a tremendous program. It's $100 million tax credit.
So, and how does that max out? I mean, at what point? I mean, at some point it maxes out. So, is it first come, first serve? How does that work then?
So what they do is they take the full kind of collective, and then they divide up the pie by. So if it's $100 million and they get $200 million, everyone in that pool only gets half of what they.
Okay, so you don't know until the very end.
Yeah, so what they do, there's a period of time about mid-year where they open it up, everyone subscribes, and then at the first of the year they come back and tell you, okay, here's how much you're allocated, essentially. So clearly a real strong appetite on
the front end.
Yeah, people wanting to give to it. So yeah.
All right. House Bill 787, providing funding and flexibility for charter schools. 86,000 kids in the state of Georgia go to charter schools right now.
That's right.
And so explain that bill a little bit, because that passed also, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It did. I was honored to be the lead author on this bill. So House Bill 787, I guess let me dispel kind of a misnomer around charter schools. A lot of folks put them in the private school category. A public school is no different than a charter school, with a couple of exceptions. A charter school is a public school that's expected to really kind of outperform a traditional public school, and it can be closed at any time if they don't hit certain
by the state
or kind of the local, whoever issues the charter.
Okay,
yeah,
but that relates to the state charter schools. That bill, I think.
It did, because what we found was, like I said, they have to perform, but yet the difference between a public school and a charter school is that the charter school students actually receive less funding. And so what we were trying to do with that bill was close the gap so that a traditional public school student had the same or near the same amount of funding as a charter school student.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
And it's been great, I just attended the ribbon cutting for a new charter school right here in Peachtree Corners, and it's
which school was that?
It's a dual language Japanese immersion right off of Spalding, and it was really, a lot of what we do down there at the Capitol kind of happens within a bubble, and so it was really neat to see the real life. I was talking to the principal of the school, and she said, Scott, honestly, we wouldn't have been able to open our doors had we not had that extra funding. And so students here in Peachtree Corners now have an option to attend really one of its only kind in the Southeast, a dual immersion language Japanese school.
Yeah. And they actually also teach Mandarin, I think, as a subset. Is what I understand, for continuing it for some kids that come in from different schools with that language. Yeah. In fact, we did what's what we do every month called the Ed Hour. We had 3 moms on. One of them was charter school mom, one homeschooling, one private school, Cornerstone Christian. Yeah. And the charter school was with the Japanese immersion school.
Oh, great. Good.
So she was telling us her experience with that school. So that was good. And she felt like her kids would not have been able to go there without scholarships and these types of tax incentives.
So what I love is, we have 3 children, and each one is so different in their needs, and so to be able to provide different educational options for parents and really put the power back in the parents and the families to decide, okay, maybe I want to go this route or a different route. That's what I'm a big proponent of.
Well, you got, how many kids do you have? 3? You said?
3 that I know. Yeah, we've got 3. Yeah. So.
The cute kids, the young kids, and we had. I think I used one of the pictures that was off your Facebook page to promote.
Yes,
and people were commenting, "Oh, they're so cute." My kids are grown; they're not cute anymore like that. So,
some people know the kids better than me. They're the real rock stars.
I would think so, right? Yeah. Sunday brunch.
Yes,
I love Sunday brunch. That's not a bad thing, but. Doing it at noon or 1 o'clock might be a different story. That's not really brunch. Yeah. So there's a bill that just passed, or at least that passed, that will come up to a vote, is what it is, really, right?
It is, yeah. We had a lot of debate about it. I voted in favor of it. This is a bill to allow cities and municipalities to allow for earlier times to serve liquor and alcohol over the brunch hour. Right. So changing, I believe the time before was 12:30. Now we can move it. Now it's 11 o'clock. Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. And so that will be on, I believe, the city
November?
of Peachtree Corners. Yeah, that'll be in November. Voted in favor of that to put that on the ballot. So again, you'll need to vote in sort of 2 separate locations. The city municipal office. Yeah.
Let's not forget that when you go out and vote, this November you're going to be voting at City Hall.
Yep.
For that and probably several. I forget what else is on there on that ballot, but
you'd have
may
to
only
ask.
be that actually on the ballot. Actually, I think it is only that on the ballot. But we're going to have to check that out.
What's neat is that's a real kind of pro-business bill, and that I was digging in. I'm a numbers guy, so I was kind of digging into the numbers and just the impact that has to not only restaurants but servers and stuff. I mean, you think about the average ticket now that maybe a server has over lunch. If somebody's spending $20, $30 more, that trickles right down to increased tips and things like that for our servers.
So if you guys want the brunch bill to pass in the city of Peachtree Corners, you need to go out and actually vote for it in November at City Hall, because it won't be on the normal ballot. That's right. Or the general ballot where everything else is on.
That's right.
Right. So make a habit of going to both places. That's the tough part of that. Unless you do early voting, then it's not so bad.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we could get into that. Scott can tell you about that also. So we can do that too. You've been knocking on doors.
That's right.
How many doors have you knocked on? Have you counted or lost count?
No, I'm a numbers guy. I've got my Excel sheet. I've probably knocked on a little over 1,200 doors now. And to be honest, Rico, this is absolutely my favorite part of what I do. It makes me a better legislator because you can hear directly from your constituents and the people that you work for what's on their minds and what do they want us to get done. And so, again, it makes me a better legislator. I love meeting people, love kind of hearing what's on their mind, and
What are you hearing?
It's good exercise, too.
Yeah, I know. This outdoor enthusiast. I was mulching last weekend or two ago, and Scott had to mention that. Well, he was walking the neighborhood. He saw the pile of mulch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that was a tough one. It was a pallet, actually, from Home Depot.
It's just a neat experience. I mean, I've had people pray over me. I've helped people move furniture.
I should have had you here mulching with me. Then. That would have been fun.
Anytime.
So what have you heard?
Yeah.
You're knocking on doors. What have you heard that? Okay, we're going to get into the weeds a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you're a Republican.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump.
Yep.
Donnie, Mr. Trump,
Uncle
President
Don.
Trump. Not my favorite. It wasn't my vote, I have to say, but and he sort of proved why he wasn't my vote. Although I did want someone to stir the pot.
Yeah.
So I did,
Yeah.
and like most people did, that's why he won.
Yeah.
Most people wanted to get done with the politics as usual, and certainly he's not doing that.
Yeah.
But he could be doing other things. So tell me, what have you heard from Republicans mainly? Because I'm assuming you're knocking on Republican doors.
We're hitting all kinds of folks, and you touched on, if I were to list probably the top three of what I'm hearing right now, it's Trump. Well, it's probably the three T's: Trump, taxes, and transportation, and then throw in healthcare too as well. Talking a lot about that.
Okay.
As it relates to Trump, just some interesting data on our, everyone I kind of knock on. Oh, this is a Republican area, and Trump actually lost our district 45-49 to Hillary, whereas 4 years prior to that, Romney carried the district. And so, there's a lot of people.
Romney was not Trump. So,
yes. There's people, obviously he's a polarizing, figure. And so people have all kinds. I've met people with absolutely love him. I've met people that don't like him, and then people right in the middle. So,
can I ask you how you feel?
One of the doors I knocked on, they had a great example, and I think this is kind of where most of our district is at right now. They said, Scott, I like the what. I like some of the policies that is doing as far as tax reduction, and I like some of the Supreme Court picks, and some of the policies reducing regulation. I like the economy, how that's doing. But just the how, I think is, the way he's going about doing it with the tweeting and calling people dirty names. When I think about my family, gosh, is that, someone that I want to point to my kids as a role model?
Yeah.
So that's, if I were to give you kind of a flavor, I think that's where most of the district's at right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I can understand that. My kids want, I keep CNN running sometimes in the background with no sound because I'm really reading the scroll, which tells me more news than the talking head sometimes. Yeah. But yeah, he's not someone to admire. The kids know this. They hear all sorts of stuff, and they're like, "How come he gets away with so much stuff that other people don't get away with?"
The trouble is, I think it's both sides. And so what I'm trying to do, and what I'm emphasizing in this election, is I want to be part of sort of a new generation of Republican and really political leadership that says, okay, guys, we don't need this divisive rhetoric. Let's get down and get stuff done for our constituents, because that's all they want. And so I'm not here to point fingers or to yell at people, and I think we just need to sort of tone down the political rhetoric we have out there on both sides, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's sort of shouting that from a mountaintop of saying, okay, let's take the temperature down a little bit.
So are you going to have a Trump sign in your yard?
I don't think I had one in my yard the first time around.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have a Scott Hilton sign in my yard.
All right, good answer.
If you want to use Scott Hilton.
Good answer. Why should... I should probably save this for last because we still have some other issues.
Sure,
but
sure.
Why should voters support you? I have this on my list. So I want to be going down this list.
Yeah.
Why should they support you for a second term? Your first term hasn't been that long, really.
So we run every 2 years.
Right.
The answer I'd give to people is really three reasons. Number one, just effective leadership. So I've gone down there and passed 6 pieces. I've sponsored and passed 6 pieces of legislation. Some people it takes almost 10 years to do that. So been effective, and not only passing legislation, but working across the aisle. So a couple of my bills I've been able to reach across the aisle, get someone to co-sponsor it with me, and get it passed. And I think that's important.
Which bill in specific?
So the very first bill I passed, it was the one to remove the word mental retardation from our code and replace it with the word intellectual disability. My second day down there in the House, I went across the aisle. I asked a good Democrat friend of mine, Representative Dreyer, hey, what bills are you working on? What ideas do you have? And he said, well, I've got this idea. I said, that's fantastic, and let's do that together. And so honestly, I think we need more of that. We need more of us just sort of talking to each other. And if you've got a good idea, I don't care if it's an R or a D, let's do it. We had another bill this year related to domestic violence, where if there's a woman who's or anyone who's a victim of domestic violence, who's in an apartment situation,
yes,
that person could break their lease now early and not suffer any penalties and get out of that harmful situation. We don't want anyone remaining in a dangerous situation because they're afraid of the repercussions of breaking a lease agreement. So I thought that was a fantastic bill. Again, kind of working across the aisle to get that done, and we got it through.
Cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that was an issue, and that makes sense. That could be an issue.
But it's effective leadership. It's voting the voice of the district and kind of what they want, and then just being open and transparent. Every piece of mail that goes out that has my cell phone on it, people can reach me. I've done over 10 town halls, send out monthly emails, and just being accessible and transparent and working hard every single day to help people out here.
Do you work full time?
It doesn't seem like it. My employer, I'll put in a plug for SunTrust. They are very gracious. They are.
There's I believe there's 4 constitutional amendments coming up on the ballot in September. One of them is the Victim Rights Amendment Act, and that's the Massey Law, and that's coming up actually in 4 other states. So I think it's actually 5 constitutional amendments. But the Massey Law is also being taken up in 4 other states. Are you familiar with that law?
I am. That's a great law. I believe it was modeled after. We don't get a lot of model legislation from California, but I believe that one actually started there. Great law, great amendment, provides certain rights to victims of some crimes, and definitely one that I'll be voting in favor of, and did this year in the House.
Excellent.
Yeah.
There's another constitutional amendment that's, I believe it's H.R. 238. It's a green space amendment. Budget's maybe, I think, $20 million for green space. Along those lines, are you familiar with that one? Yeah, so again, budget neutral, so it's not an increase to a tax. Essentially what it's doing is taking existing tax and redirecting it and dedicating funds for additional green space and creating sort of what's called the Outdoor Stewardship Act, I think is what it was called. Okay. And so, again, that's another thing I'm hearing from constituents is, as we get more and more developed here and all that, Scott, I need places for green space. So that's great to see that we're going to have resources dedicated. So that allows cities to be able to go into that, or counties, I guess, to be able to purchase green space or to enhance green space? That's a good question.
I believe it sets up a fund. I'll have to see who has certain access to it or not. But, it's on the sale of outdoor and sporting equipment. It goes into that.
Right. If you see what I'm doing, we're trying to see where Scott stands on some of these constitutional amendments, because when you're standing in front of that ballot, and most people won't know, what is that constitutional amendment for? At least you know where Scott stands on it.
Well, and Rico, I get so many calls, emails, all that right before the election of, Scott, who do I, and it's the neat part about what I do is I get to meet a lot of these candidates, and, so definitely I want to be a resource to folks, in the community. Because honestly, even on my own ballot, when I get down to some of the judges,
God. Yes, I don't know those judges. Yeah. Although I had 4 judges for the Gwinnett Superior Court on the podcast. And if I didn't, I would not have known who they were, probably. Sad to say. Yeah. There's another statewide constitutional amendment, statewide, of course, H.R. 993. It's a statewide business court. Mm-hmm. Not sure why we need a business court that's statewide. It sounds almost redundant. So it sounds like it might take it out of more local control. But are you familiar with that? Can you tell me about that?
I am, and this one was fantastic, and we definitely need it.
Tell me why, because I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening is, and I'm not an attorney, so I'll try to explain this in layman's terms, but you have sort of these complex, white-collar business cases that are making their way through a variety of court systems and, making their way to judges who may not be schooled exactly in some of those cases. And so for us, to continue to be the number one state in the nation to do business, we thought it would be best to set up a specific business court where we can funnel cases to that court, with judges who are experts in that type of case law, and really sort of help streamline a lot of these complex business cases that before were getting hung up in just a variety of different cases. So it provides more certainty to business owners and folks doing business here in Georgia.
And which judges are these? Are these appointed judges? Are these existing judges?
So there's existing judges right now that are handling a myriad of different, business cases. And so that would kind of take that flow out of some of those systems and put it directly to where you could go to a business court.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those would be new judges that have to deal with that? Or I'm just trying to get a sense if it's existing judges or are these newly appointed that the state would appoint to handle just the business court?
I believe these may be new judges, but I can certainly follow up on that. Yeah, That's a good question.
Cool. Let's see. I have a bit of a question here.
Sure.
It looks like it's a little long, so let's see if I can pull this up.
Yeah.
Oops. Yeah, right. Well, it's funny how that works on the comments.
Just say hey to my mom or anyone.
Sure, say hey. Hey, Mom. Scott's doing okay. So I'm going to look on Facebook on my iPhone. This way I can pull up that question a little better. This is from Bonnie Barclay.
Okay.
So let's see what Bonnie's question is.
Hey, Bonnie.
Should be able to pull that up here.
Yeah, if anyone, if you are watching, I have a Facebook page, Representative Scott Hilton. It's just Facebook, Scott Hilton GA, and you can always send me messages there, and I usually get back to you same day.
Good. So. Responsive. So Bonnie says, we are in an election window, so is this an equal time issue? Please let us know when the opponent is featured. Bonnie, the opponent was Beth Moore, right? Beth.
Yeah.
Beth Moore. I'm sorry, Beth B. Moore. And Beth is a Democratic candidate running, challenging the Republican incumbent. And Beth was on actually a few weeks ago. In fact, I want to say hi to Beth because I believe she's watching now. So hi, Beth. Which is funny because Scott was watching last time, so, a little bit of each.
Yeah.
Listening, this is good. You guys are listening to each other, learning a little bit about things, and that's good about each other. So, Bonnie, check a previous podcast that I had with Beth. That was a great show. She was a great guest. Yeah. Matthew Yarbrough, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah.
I am curious to know, with several Republican, and I haven't read this first, I'm reading it together, right?
Live.
So, sorry about that. But I'm curious to know, with several Republican-leaning states embracing Medicaid expansion, including North Dakota, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, and other Republican states like Idaho and Utah, putting Medicaid expansion on the ballot in November, would Rep. Hilton be willing to consider the same?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question, and it's one of the questions that I've heard a lot. I mentioned before, about healthcare, and what concerns me is, we have a certain number of Georgians who do kind of fall within a coverage gap who are not receiving healthcare coverage. So we need to figure out that. Just some stats on Medicaid here in Georgia that may be helpful to the conversation. So 1 in 6 Georgians right now receive Medicaid. We spend a little over $1 billion on Medicaid here in Georgia. And Medicaid, when it was set up by the federal government and administered by the states, was meant for the poor, the indigent, single mothers, and those with special needs. And so there's been a real push as of late. One of the big Democrat platforms in the governor's race and in other races is the expansion of Medicaid. I'm not for a wholesale, expand it with without any sort of strings attached. I don't think it's good for the person being insured or any of our doctors and things like that here in Georgia as well. For me, this is a personal issue. We have a child who has special needs and is on Medicaid right now. We've done a lot in Georgia to make strides, but there's still a very long waiting list of people for waivers to receive Medicaid. I think we ought to, if we're going to expand Medicaid, address that first. There's about 8,000 folks who are eligible but are not receiving Medicaid here in Georgia. we have, in essence, expanded Medicaid over the last 5 years. If you look at our Medicaid rolls in Georgia, I talked about sort of how much we spend on it. Our rolls have grown by thousands of people over the last sort of 5 years of who we're now covering with Medicaid. So again,
and there's still people waiting, though, even with that expansion.
Yeah. I mean, the Democrat platform to me seems to be kind of a wholesale expansion of Medicaid. I'm not comfortable with Medicaid for able-bodied working adults. I think that ought to come with at least some strings attached of work requirements and other requirements when you're discussing that Medicaid. The other issue, too, is that, and I mentioned before, we have to balance our budget here in Georgia. So the fiscal note that I've seen on expanding Medicaid is about $500 million. So if that's a new $500 million that we have to spend, do you take that money away from education? Do you take it away from transportation, public safety? Where do you get that money from? And the answer has always been, well, D.C. is giving us, the match.
Right, they are, actually. Yeah. For at least a period of time, they are.
Yeah, and what happens is D.C., the federal government is matching, but then that match goes down in 2020 by about 10%. So that's another nut that we would have to cover and figure out. And again, yeah. No,
I get that. Unfortunately, the Trump doesn't help. He wants to destruct the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. So part of that is funded by that, isn't it?
Well, I wouldn't pin it on Trump so much as our Republican colleagues, maybe up in D.C., who I was hoping to see them come up with, an alternative solution.
Right.
Obviously, they didn't have the votes to make that happen, and so...
Or the will, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, so now it's gone down back to the states to figure out,
right.
Okay, how do we figure that out? So there's two issues. So it's coverage and then the expense of healthcare. I mean, that's honestly the number one thing I've heard about is, Scott, healthcare costs are just out of control. And so how do we address that?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I serve as a member of the education and healthcare committees down in the House, and so we're actively working to address a lot of these issues with some policy down there.
To get off that for a minute, there's a couple of cats, so you might be hearing one of them scratching right now. The study committees currently, I mean, you're on several study committees, actually.
Yep.
One of them is about the Atlanta airport takeover.
Yeah.
Explain that. What is that?
Well, so, it's interesting. We meet January to March, and a lot of people think, well, that's when you do your work and you're done. Well, actually, a lot of the work takes place through these study committees that meet year-round. So there's any number of study committees that are out there. I believe on my last email update, I provided the full list of them. But one of them was looking at management of the airport. It's the only sort of public airport of its kind that's managed by a city. So the city of Atlanta manages the airport. And so obviously you've read there's been a lot of discussion around, some ethics issues and right. things like that with how...
No, they just hired a new airport
like a new manager, yeah.
from JFK, the manager that used to be with JFK Airport,
yep.
I believe.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's more of a conversation around oversight of the airport. Should it be a state sort of public authority entity, or should the city of Atlanta continue?
So the city actually controls it directly without an authority around it?
Yeah, there's no...
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's all kind of run through the city.
So how do they fund it?
Well, I mean, a lot of the airport kind of funds itself through... I mean, that's...
most places do authorities, like you were saying.
Yeah. The city may have some sort of layer of authority, like a public... But it's... The reporting goes directly to the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
Corruption.
So we'll see. It's not only that, but I mean, I think the airport lost power or something, and then somebody jumped the fence. So, what's just is the best structure to manage? I mean, the airport is one of our best, if not the best, asset that we have in this state, and so we want to do everything we can to protect it, enhance it.
Yeah. I mean, the city of Atlanta was hacked. I can't imagine if the airport gets hacked.
Yeah. So who's in the best position to continue to foster the airport? Yeah.
Okay. So you have the airport, and then we have getting back to schools a little bit.
Yeah,
There's a big thing about schools and start times.
Yeah.
And I had a little poll on my on the Facebook page. And so participate on that poll if you'd like, because right now it's leading that schools should start after Labor Day weekend on that choice. Small sampling, not scientific, of course. But so when should, I mean, right now, obviously, everyone knows, it depends on the county within at least a week of each other. Yeah. Because some counties start or end a little earlier or later by one week or so, I think. Yeah. But some people are looking to want it to start after Labor Day and end somewhere around June something, June 28th or June 24th. You know, is there a good reason for that? Are you a proponent of that? Or how do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm a proponent of what the people want. I've done my own kind of unscientific poll, and it is leaning toward later start times. Rico, what really drives that is testing. There's a number of sort of standardized tests that take place throughout the year. There's a certain number of, so those are at certain times, and then so they want to fit in a number of educational days before that. I've also, my understanding is AP tests are administered at a certain time, and so
they want to add to the school day, to the amount of school days?
No, what they're trying to do is by starting it earlier. So if you haven't noticed, I mean, and I'm sure you have, school seems to be starting last week of July almost, first week in August.
Yes. August 6th or 4th, it just depends. Yeah.
They're trying to fit in so many educational days prior to some of these standardized tests. And so you would need to change some of the testing dates. But, with anything we do down there, I mean, there's, we pull one lever and something else happens. And so it's a complex issue. But, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people think that it's healthy for the children to be out in the summer and be creative, be running around, and then I have some folks who say school ought to be year round with some large chunks of breaks throughout. So
that'd be like a revolution, I think, because that just doesn't seem, I know logically that might sound good, but can you imagine kids being out of school 2 or 3 weeks, and the teachers would be going ballistic trying to get those kids back into the learning mode, and then know that three more weeks vacation after another 2 months, and I can't see that happening.
No, I mean, I don't know. Some of the best times that we have as a family is our, we do the summer vacation, and just, those memories are some of the best.
And for me, it was starting after Labor Day in New York, where I grew up. Yeah. Start after Labor Day, and then you end the last few days of June.
Or something, yeah.
But you had July and August, the dog days of summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, although August is a bear, right, in Atlanta, so I don't know, but that might be better off in the air-conditioned school.
Well, and that's the debate too. Is I mean, you have school buses that are hot, and do you push it back to the cooler month? Do you start in September when it's
there's an economy to that too, and there's a tourist economy to that too, which is another aspect that people are talking about. Business people are talking about tourism. There's be more money out there to be spent during August.
Yeah. Well, that's been the biggest thing for me that I've learned is that with every issue down there, you think, oh, well, that's easy. It's just moving the... Yeah. But when you start to sort of peel back the layers, everything is pretty complex.
Complicated. Life is complicated. Yeah. We have a little bit more to go. I have a couple of other issues I wanted to ask you about. Sure. So let's see where we could go with this.
Any other Facebook Live...
I'm looking at. Come on, people!
You gotta ask. You can ask anything, Yeah.
We have him as a captive audience. He's not leaving, so No, I'm just kidding.
What's been the craziest thing I've seen down there?
It's funny how that is. So we don't we won't discuss Donald Trump anymore because really that's more of a national issue. So no need to talk there. You've been endorsed by a few people, by a few organizations. I just want to. Put that out there. You were endorsed by the Georgia Right to Life. Mm-hmm. You voted yes for the concurrence vote. House Bill 873 prohibits use of handheld technology while driving.
Oh, yeah.
I got rear-ended the other day, 3 days ago.
Oh, no.
High school girl. And I get out of the car, and there were 2 girls in the car, and they were both on their phones. Yeah. Now, they were on their phones, I'm sure, after the accident happened. Yeah. I'm at a turn lane, stopped. I stopped, and 2 seconds later, bang, get hit by the QT off Peachtree Corner Circle.
Well, it's the there's such a direct correlation between. We looked at the data, and between this holding this in your hand and getting an accident, so we had to do something, and it's going to have to be a cultural change or something.
Yes.
So we've seen it already. It's not changing as quickly as we would like to see it, and I think it's a habit that people are just we've got to break, and it'll break over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got to have the little thing in your car now to stick your phone.
I think I bought the kids, everyone, wife, kids, the little hold that phone right on the windshield type of thing. Yeah. And by the way, if you do that in Georgia during July and August, your iPhone will tell you it's too hot, it's going to shut off.
Oh, really?
By the
That's
way,
interesting.
yes.
That's
It's
interesting.
funny.
You mentioned the study committees, though, before. So there's two that I'm serving on. One has to do with nursing homes, nursing home safety, making sure we're taking care of those in nursing homes. Our elderly folks are some of our most vulnerable populations. We want to make sure that we have good standards of care in our nursing homes. So doing that. And I've also been recently appointed to a mental health study committee here for Fulton County to make sure that we are providing all the resources we can to folks who are struggling with mental health and behavioral health issues. So our first meeting is the 25th, I believe, on that. Yeah.
Are you seeing any? The opioid is a big thing too. Are you seeing any of that? How are you dealing with that?
We've the legislature's been addressing that over a number of years through many different bills, and hopefully we'll start to see the impact of that pretty soon. But that has been a scourge in our people in society.
It's unbelievable. There's the V shape coming out of Atlanta going through the north suburbs, like Marietta and other areas. And it's unbelievable the amount of problems with opioids, the addiction, and the deaths. In fact, they're talking about. What's the name of those centers? And it's not here in Georgia they're talking about, but the injection centers. That some cities want to fund safe injection centers. That's I don't know. It's an interest because there are a lot of deaths happening because of it.
We're trying to address opioid use, and then another study committee that's going to be really good is we have right now a school safety study committee, so that's a real big issue. We want to make sure our schools are safe, and so last year we dedicated, I believe it was about $18 million in just this area for additional school safety, and there's a committee now looking at what are some of the best practices. I know Gwinnett County Schools are some of the leaders in that area as far as what they do. But
have they spent that money, or are they deciding how to spend that money?
No, so we allocated that money in our budget last year for Gwinnett County, got a big chunk, and so they're going to use that to do different things to improve safety in our schools. So through key card access at the doors, cameras, security systems, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you guys want to learn a little bit more, we had a podcast on school safety.
Oh, okay.
About 2 or 3 months ago. 3 months ago, maybe it was. And we had the Gwinnett County safety officer along with the Gwinnett County Police.
That's great.
And we discussed a whole hour about, people talking about hardening schools, bulletproof glass, control access with cards. Yeah. Yeah. When you think about it, we want to protect our kids, but you think about the shootings. They're not as many as people think, and it gets scary sometimes because I think we scare ourselves sometimes. Yeah. But we do want to make sure that there's at least some safety and forethought, just in case something happens.
No, it's extremely rare. If you look at kind of the numbers, but these are our most precious. Yes. People in our, that I've got kids of my own. We want to make sure that we're doing everything to protect them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You have a candidate, Beth Moore, who's running against you. She's a Democrat. Yeah. There's a lot of Democratic candidates out in the field. Yeah. We saw quite a few running just for the Democratic nomination for congressional district, I think 7. And there were 5 candidates running. Now, Catherine Bordeaux is the
Congress,
running for Congress, and she's running against Woodall, who's the incumbent. Yeah. So we're seeing a lot more women, a lot more Democrats stepping up to run. What makes you different than your opponent? Why not? You can see why people are voting, people are running. Trump is not helping his cause and motivating quite a few people. Republicans too, by the way. It's not just Democrats, because it's Republicans in other states that are running against Trump.
Yeah.
Although none of them are quite making the headway, because Republican primaries are a little different.
Yeah. No, I like the civic engagement. I like to see people stepping up. But I think the biggest difference is I just love this community. I have served in this community for years before being, in an elected position. And it wasn't something of a title for me. It was just sort of a natural extension of the service that I was already doing in the community. So I didn't run based on who was in the White House or what national politics were going on. I ran because I love Peachtree Corners. I love this area, and I love to serve. So that's probably the biggest difference of just, maybe motivations for running. For me, it was just, again, an extension of some of the work in the community that I was already doing, just being able to do it at a higher level. So, yeah.
All right. Listen, there's a variety of reasons for people running. And that's good.
Yeah.
Getting motivated is good too, though.
Yeah.
And God knows Trump is motivating quite a few people. And I'm sorry, I just keep going back to Trump because I can't get him out of my head. We have morning rants sometimes, me and the kids, talking about politics. And it'll go on for an hour, and good and bad, because even the 15-year-old has his opinion about Trump. Yeah. And this is good because they're discussing politics the same way. I'd love to see lots of kids doing that, because, you see that in Europe. It's way different than it is here in the States. Mm-hmm. They talk more politics. There are people out voting more. Yeah. There's a better attitude towards voting. Yeah. We don't have that same attitude here in the United States about voting. We can get apathetic about voting.
It's good and it's bad. What I tell a lot of folks is, to be honest, what I do and what your city council person does probably has a lot more effect on your day-to-day life than the person sitting up at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So, but for some reason that gets all the attention. For me here locally, everything I've seen, what we're doing here locally and as a state, again, number one state to do business, reduced your taxes. We're working on transportation. Everything I'm seeing is going in the right direction. Now, there's a lot of noise going on up in D.C., but is that worth the wholesale change? I think it'd be unfortunate if we decided to take a different direction as a state because of what's going on elsewhere. Everything I see here is working. A lot of our neighboring states, when we got into that recession, said we're going to tax and spend our way out of this recession. Georgia said we're going to grow our way out of it, and that's exactly what we've done.
Well, we've been fortunate to be able to do that. Other states may not have been that fortunate. Yeah. And because I have a passion for movies and such. Oh, yeah. How do you feel about the movie incentives in the state of Georgia? I know that one of the gubernatorial candidates at one point was thinking maybe we should nix it. Yeah. Like I think North Carolina did at one point. Yeah. And, of course, all that movie business came south to Georgia. Yeah. How do you feel about the incentives?
It's honestly been one of the biggest success stories I think we have. When I look at any kind of tax incentive, I look at the ROI on it. So if we're willing to give a tax incentive for this, are we going to see the bang for our buck? And by far, we've seen that on the movie industry. But that's the difficult part about what we do. Yeah, we get presented with all types of different tax breaks for all different industries, and we really have to dig into the numbers and study, okay, is this going to give the taxpayer the return that we expect out of it? For us, the movie industry, again, huge numbers as far as what we've seen out of it. Good
to hear. Yeah. Because most times incentives don't quite work the way states or cities think they should. But this has been Marvel movies, Walking Dead. It's been unbelievable.
I get so excited every time I see that little peach at the end of
at the very end of every movie. I stay until the end.
I love those little yellow signs that you see all over the place where they're filming. We watched that show Ozark.
Yes, the film. In fact, my son said that he saw the building in Technology Park that they were filming. He recognized the building.
Oh, it's awesome.
That they were filming. So it was like a really strange feeling for him. Yeah. To know it's Ozark, but wait, they shot that.
Yeah, that's Peachtree Corners.
Yes, in Technology Park.
Yeah. So. Well, and that's people coming to Georgia, spending money here, helping our economy. Right here in our backyard. Right. So it's been great.
Cool. Yeah. We're at the end of the hour. We passed through it. There could have been more that we could talk about, but I think we're good. And think I need you
Yes.
to say why everyone should be voting for you. So you need to give me that 2-minute elevator speech about, well, not me, but the podcast listeners and Facebook, why people should be voting for you. That 2-minute elevator speech.
I'll give you my elevator speech. So first, let me thank the voters. It has been an incredible honor to serve you the last 2 years. I've done it with hard work, integrity, enthusiasm, passion. I would love to go back and work on your behalf again. I've been effective at getting things done for you. I've been a voice down there for you that gets things done. I would again be honored to have your vote on November 6th, which is 54 days away. You can early vote starting October 15th. And I'll bring some things here. If I haven't knocked on your door already, I'll be knocking with one of these and coming by to say hello. I'll put a plug in too. If you want a yard sign, you can comment below and let me know. We also have these little nifty card magnets if you're a fan of those. Cool. And if you have a little beverage, we have a koozie too. But, again, I absolutely love this area. Every morning I wake up, I think about what I can do to serve this area, serve you, and make Georgia and our community better. And it would just be a tremendous honor to continue to do that down at the State House on your behalf. So I ask again for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yes, sir.
And I want to tell everyone that we also have upcoming shows. So Alan Kaplan and I are talking about the next show for the Ed Hour, and we're figuring out what that's going to be. It's going to be an exciting subject, I'm sure, as it's been for the last 3 shows. So we were excited to do the last one with a bit more live, Facebook Live, moving the camera around, showing people and stuff, and that was at Prototype Prime. We're going to be doing that show, I believe, on the 20th of September, and that'll be a Facebook Live at noon. Brian Johnson, City Manager, he's going to be on with me on the 27th of September at Prototype Prime at noon. So if you have city questions, Brian will answer almost every question I put to him. And if he can't, he'll tell me. And there's always something new that's going on that he shares because it's right after the city council meeting. More candidates coming up over the next few weeks. So October 11th is a noon time. We've confirmed it, so hopefully it's still on. October 11th, we'll have Beth Moore, Democratic candidate for District 95. Sally Harrell, State House 40. She's the Democratic candidate challenging that. And Ben Koo for Gwinnett County for District 2 challenging the incumbent Lynette Howard. So those are 3 Democrats, 1 show. If you have questions, that's a great time to put it to that. And, of course, more candidates coming. We're talking to Catherine Bordeaux, the congressional candidate, and some other people to be on the podcast. And there's no reason in the world you can't know what's going on because, Scott, this hour, if you don't know what's going on in the city and what's going to be on the ballot constitutional-wise, I mean, it's just like you shouldn't be listening anymore. But thank you, Scott. I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
Thank you guys for being here with us.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita. Check out our Facebook page. Download the Spreaker radio app for Apple, Android, and Windows devices. And subscribe to our weekly newsletter at PeachtreeCornersLive.com.